John, thank you very much. See you a bit later on.
There are fears that tens of thousands of children are being taught in illegal and unregistered schools. Schools in England should be registered with the government if they teach 5 or more children for 18 hours a week.
But a BBC investigation has revealed there have been around 50 safeguarding alerts at illegal schools. Ofsted says it needs more powers to tackle them. Here's more from Lucy Manning.
A suspected unregistered school in Southend-on-Sea. Here a young boy appears to be crying.
There's a child here who clearly is upset.
Minutes later, the teacher seems to use force.
There's a physicality about that. They're manhandling the child. The child remains very distressed. That raises immediate concerns. I wouldn't expect to see that.
On a different occasion, a boy appears to cower away from the teacher.
What you've got there is clearly a child who seems to be quite wary of the adult that's there. When the adult turns around, the child steps back and the adult clearly strikes the child. On all counts, that is completely unacceptable. There are huge safeguarding issues about the well-being of those children.
The synagogue which owns this building denies this is an unregistered school. It says education is provided here within the 18-hour limit, after which they must register as a school. But when we observed it, it was operating for longer. The synagogue also says it's not aware of any assaults, but asked for more information. Ofsted has identified more than 350 suspected unregistered schools. Many are run in houses and offices, even an industrial estate. Not all unregistered schools are religious. Of those that are, half are Muslim. The BBC has obtained a copy of a book from an unregistered school in Birmingham. In one section, it openly advocates the murder of homosexuals. Another chapter warns a wife against refusing sex with her husband. Elsewhere, it says a woman wearing perfume is an adulterer. We've obtained photos of other suspected unregistered schools that were discovered. They show shocking conditions, squalor, appalling food hygiene, dangerous wiring. The Department for Education says 38 unregistered schools have ceased to operate in the last 2 years. It says no child should be placed at risk, and where a school is operating illegally, action must be taken. Meanwhile, thousands of children are still left at risk of extremism, uninspected teaching and shocking conditions. Lucy Manning, BBC News.
Well, I mean, there are some really shocking pictures in that. We're going to talk about that now with Izzy Posen, who's a former pupil of an unregistered school. We'll talk to you in a minute, if that's all right, Izzy. And also Chris Kennedy, who's Hackney Council's Children and Young People Scrutiny Commission Chair. And some of this, Chris, happened in Hackney. I mean, just seeing those pictures, it's really quite shocking, the sort of conditions that children are being taught in. What's being done to stop it?
Well, the most shocking thing, really, is that the law isn't up to the job it needs to do of allowing things like that to be stopped. So in Hackney, when we investigated this, we talked to our safeguarding professionals, the Safeguarding Children Board. You also heard in your clip there from Ofsted, and both of those organisations say the law isn't good enough and it doesn't give them the powers that they require to get into those institutions and check that proper safeguarding is in place. And
have you tried to get into these institutions, see what is going on?
Yes, so our Safeguarding Children Board, our independent chair, came to one of our investigation sessions and said quite clearly he does not have a clear line of sight on the children in these settings because the law won't actually allow him to get in. And in your own piece last night, you heard Amanda Spielman, the National Director of Ofsted, say that effectively her hands are tied and that if Ofsted inspectors go in, they can't even pick up a piece of evidence and take it away with them.
OK, well, let's hear some of that evidence firsthand from Izzy. You were at one of these unregistered schools. Give us an idea of what it was like, starting with primary school first up.
It was a full day of studying religious texts. In a classroom setting, looking at texts and books all day long. And the appalling thing about that was that the methods of discipline used were physical abuse and corporal punishment, and we were hit on a daily basis.
By what? All the teachers? By just some teachers? By individuals?
Some teachers were worse than others. Some teachers had the reputation of being the teachers who hit you. More than others, but all teachers hit. And that was, I mean, every teacher had on their desk, on his desk, had a wooden spoon, a big wooden spoon that they would use to discipline.
You eventually left your primary school, I understand, because of a particular incident.
Yes.
What happened?
So this was this specific teacher who wasn't my teacher, was a teacher in a younger class, and I got into trouble with him. And he came into my class, called me out, and just beat me to the ground, and just beat me until I was motionless on the ground. And I came home with massive bruises, and my parents were like, this is the end of it, we're taking you out.
So your parents actually took you out of school, having understood.
Eventually, this was towards the very end. This was the last 6 months of me being in that school.
And you didn't speak English up until you were 18, is that right?
That's right, yes.
So what were you taught in school? Just make it clear for us.
The language of instruction is Yiddish. And we were taught only religious studies. So, yeah, none of my friends could speak any English. Some of my friends didn't even recognise the ABC. We didn't have any numeracy or anything, and I had to teach myself at the age of 18.
I'm interested in your parents' point of view, because presumably they wanted you to go to a particular school, did they? Why did they send you to that school like that, for example?
So this is a very religious community, and what's valued is being brought up to be able to serve God and fulfil the religious duties. Secular education isn't that much of an issue.
OK, that's interesting. Let's just pick up some of those points, if we could, with Chris. And we've got a statement from the Department of Education saying no child should be placed at risk. Where a school is operating illegally, action must be taken. We find a joint team with Ofsted to target these organisations, and as a result of that, 192 inspections have taken place and 50 warning notices have been issued. But you've already said that you think, as far as you're concerned, Ofsted don't have enough power. So what would you like to say needs to change?
Well, the definition needs to be changed of what actually constitutes a school. So the chair of our Safeguarding Children board says if it talks like a school and it walks like a school, call it a school. So if children are there from dawn till dusk 5 or 6 days a week, even if they're only receiving religious education, call it a school. And then your safeguarding professionals can get in there and do something about it. Check that there are proper DBS checks on all the staff, that they have a safeguarding policy, that they have a safeguarding lead. At the moment, they can do that if there's a complaint. If Izzy made a complaint about a regular school, your safeguarding professionals could walk in there now, the same day that the complaint was received. But when that complaint is made about an unregistered setting, they can't get in.
OK, it's an extremely interesting thing to be talking to you both about. Chris Kennedy from Hackney Council, Children and Young People Scrutiny Commission, thank you. Izzy Posen, thank you as well for coming to tell us your story too. Thank you.
Izzy, I just ask, it affected your relationship with your parents as well?
Are we offline now?
No, we're still on.
Oh, sorry. I'd rather not talk about my personal relationship.
Yeah. OK, that's fine. I just wonder whether
Yeah, but I have left the community by now.
OK, thank you very much for talking to us, Izzy. Good
Thank you for telling us your story. Thank you. We know that it's very